I don't know about Thriller Bark, guys. This new character, Brook, really needed some fleshing out. I'm sorry, but I make no bones about telling it like I see it. And Luffy asking every random weirdo to join the crew. But the biggest thing about Thriller Bark is nothing happens. Welcome to my channel on the best of fantasy. Let's talk One Piece, specifically the Thriller Bark Saga. In all seriousness, I had a fun time with Thriller Bark. I read it in the manga, of course, as usual, but I did watch some episodes in order to get a sense of the music, specifically, well, you know, Binks's Brew. Yo ho ho ho, yo ho ho ho, which is now stuck eternally in my mind. But this is a great example of One Piece brilliance, combining layers of memory. This scene with Binks's Brew, with Brook singing at the end. I mean, I'm going to talk about it later as well, but just combining these layers of memory in the present, with the present as well, through the music that is happening, conveying joy and camaraderie alongside sorrow and loss. We have the scenes with Laboon. Oh, yay, we got back to Laboon. And Brook with the Rumbar pirates. And that's all, you know, they're dying all around him as they're singing one last joyous, melancholy time. But also, there's the celebration of the present with the Straw Hats and their friends and allies. So it's just a very poignant scene. Just, I think, an iconic One Piece moment for sure. And there's also the beautiful backstory with the bonus of being tied to someone we already know in Laboon. So just great stuff. Also, I can't help but think that the name of this island slash ship, Thriller Bark, has to be a nod to Michael Jackson's song of the same name, Thriller. I grew up, probably I'm a little bit older than Oda, but similar time when we grew up in the 70s and 80s. And I have to tell you that that music video of Michael Jackson's Thriller, that is stuck in here as well. The zombies in there. And I just have to think that this is a bit of a nod as well. And of course, the word bark simply means ship, which is an early clue that Thriller Bark is not actually an island, but a ship, a very large one, but it is a ship. Clever title. But we begin with the crew in the Florian Triangle, which seems an obvious allusion to the Bermuda Triangle, where ships disappear and weird things happen. Very haunted place, reminiscent of ghosts and that sort of thing. And of course, that is where we meet Brook, who right away, this is a bit of One Piece absurdity, which I love. You have a character here who is a skeleton and a gentleman, frankly, a bit of a dandy as well. Probably in a series that is infamous for its dad jokes. I think Brook might actually be the king of the dad jokes. So I actually enjoyed that tremendously. I do like that sort of humor, unfortunately, for those people who have to live with me. Uh, but I just love this meeting where Luffy almost immediately just says, "Hey, join my crew," and this is, of course, Luffy, as usual, being very prescient. I think he sees right away the humanity in Brook, and I love that he sees his humanity before the other members of the crew do. I also think that he perceives his loneliness, and that is something that something in Luffy reaches out to Brook and offers him a place right away, which I thought was just fantastic. But that was just a really cool Luffy moment as well early on. In addition to Luffy reaching out, I also want to pause to mention Frankie and his thoughtfulness. I love Frankie. I just love how he is probably the most humane and emotional and feeling of the crew. His thoughtfulness with the mini Mary, I just okay, that was a nice little touch. Thank you, Frankie. But yeah, I just had to point that out because Frankie's humanity comes up a lot in here as well, which I'm totally here for. But back to the haunted stuff. I mean, we get the when the characters finally do reach Thriller Bark, we immediately see the zombie Cerberus with one fox head. Something's a little off here. So this is the One Piece version of Cerberus, if you will. But this is a clue here. We have entered hell, of course. Cerberus being the figure from Greek mythology who guards the gate to hell. So love that. This is just there's so many great allusions in here. But we have eventually kind of coming to light here is a plot that is concocted by Dr. Hogback with some help from Absalom and Perona. These seem to be kind of the ringleaders behind, of course, the big baddie Gecko Moria, who, of course, steals people's shadows. What a weird devil fruit power to have. I just love how I keep coming across these very strange devil fruit powers that at first I'm just scratching my head like, what is he thinking? And then later it becomes such a cool integral part of the story. And I have to admire Oda's genius once again. So very cool. But of course, these leaders are backed by what might seem at first to be very creepy, but I think deep down very sad shadow zombies. And also there's Perona's ghosts. But I think that the zombies are more or less unwilling followers in this case. It's really the ringleaders that we have to worry about. A lot of this really may seem on the surface to be very silly and a bit creepy, but there's actually some really interesting exploration of what makes us human, I think, in the portrayal of these zombies and how they're exploited and where maybe their humanity lies. Some of the zombies have a story, like Sindri, for example. She even has little personality quirks, like the thing with the plates. So, does the zombie's personality, it's there, does it come from its body, or does it come from the shadow that is animating it? Or is it what Moria claims? Are these just mindless entities that are there for him to command? Are they mindless slaves, in other words, as he claims? Which leads to a lot of questions. Are we our bodies? Is that what we are? Or are we something more? What constitutes life? What constitutes spirit? How does the domination of another rely upon the denial of their humanity? And in reviving the dead, Dr. Hogback forgets the most important thing about us, and that is our humanity. He claims that he's got some noble purpose in reviving the dead, but actually, what Chopper especially eventually sees and expresses and realizes, even though he admires Dr. Hogback because of his reputation initially, but he also recognizes eventually that through his arrogance, he's in fact the opposite of a true doctor. A true doctor is someone who is devoted to life, and this is someone who's devoted to his arrogance. He has an obvious connection to Dr. Frankenstein in the book by Mary Shelley. This is where you see the true monster is the arrogant human who messes with creation, who thinks that somehow our intelligence allows us to manipulate and exploit, and we overlook the most important things about humanity: our spirit, our soul, what makes us truly alive, what makes us truly human. So some good stuff. It's goofy and silly, but I think always with One Piece, it pays to look beneath the surface and see maybe what Oda is exploring here. I also found it fun as we learned more about Moria and his victims. We had the arrival of an old man with severe injuries as Luffy keeps misidentifying. It's astounding how he can be so perceptive and simultaneously such a goofball, but there it is. But he's actually right again. It is an old man with severe injuries, in at least one case. And you see the Straw Hats respond to this plea for help, essentially. They rise to the occasion. And their mission is to restore the full humanity, to restore their shadows to him, an aspect of them that has been stolen, that is vital to their humanity, to their full life, to their freedom, to living a full life, which very much entails having freedom on many levels. We'll get back to that idea of freedom because that's really a central One Piece theme as well. Some are very obvious in their sympathy, in their empathy for the victims of Moria. like Frankie again. I love Frankie's reaction. His tears are so genuine and beautiful. Others hide, I think, their empathy pretty well, like Zoro. And I always love how Zoro and Sanji, they're tough guys, but there are moments, even I think, with the two of them where you do see, even for each other. I love how so many people comment on the Zoro Sanji relationship and how those two are always pretending to hate each other's guts, but they are in fact really brothers. And there are moments where that really does shine through. But you have a ton of threats that loom against the Straw Hats here on Thriller Bark. The villains just throw everything at them. As usual, this is One Piece, right? It gets crazy. It gets bizarre. There's a ton of action, and it's just a lot of fun and zaniness. But some of the villains, though, in the process of all of this, most of them remain baddies, but there are some, like Lola, for example. I love this, who become an ally. That's another great One Piece thing. You never know which villain is actually going to turn out to be beneath the surface. Someone who is, has some humanity and compassion. And then you see that in Lola and her befriending Nami and becoming allies with her. So that was a great thing. And there were some who remain foes, but you get a sense of respect for them, such as the ancient samurai zombie from Wano. I think Wano is probably important because I think I've heard that word before. I think there's a future saga or arc or something set there. So anyway, I did notice the word, but that he turns out to be a great adversary for Zoro. But also a really cool moment of mutual respect happens there, which I thought was very cool. And Zoro gets his new sword as well. So very One Piece. There's some depth in all the silliness. I really did love how we see the flickers of humanity in the zombies and even some personality, as if Moria's power can't quite erase all of their humanity. You see it in, of course, the penguin dog zombie who gets Sanji's shadow, and you immediately recognize Sanji in there through his very chivalric quirks and also his kicks. Or Jigoro, the zombie with Zoro's shadow, who's wearing a tutu, and proclaims that the scar on his back is a scar on his back would be a swordsman's shame. So immediately we realize, oh yeah, there's Zoro's shadow. And then you get some crazy villains in there. Obviously, there's Taralan, the big old spider monkey thing, and of course Oars. I mean, Oars he's the big dude here, the biggest zombie ever. And of course, in all of these moments of action and craziness, you get the Straw Hats and Brook as well. Who is the humming swordsman, very cool, as well as a musician. This is the arc or the saga arc, I guess it's both. But anyway, this is where the Straw Hats get their musician, another really essential element to the crew, I would say. And it happens in such a beautiful way. But he also proves his worth as a fighter, and he provides as well some essential intelligence, some details such as the insights into Moria's power and also the knowledge about salt to be used against the zombies. So good stuff. But Moria really does prove quite formidable. I mean, he is one of the 7 warlords, so of course he's going to be tough, right? And his devil fruit, it's, as I said before, it's bizarre, but it's strangely very effective. If you have a power that somehow can take a piece of your opponent's humanity away and make them helpless, then that's powerful, obviously. There's he is a kind of a chaotic element in there. I guess he's kind of chaotic evil in a sense, with little care about the humanity of his victims, including Luffy, whose shadow he goes into Oars, which of course there's going to be some real high level insanity as a result of that marriage. And of course, the first thing that Oars says when he gets Luffy's shadow is meat. And he wants to be the Pirate King, of course. But yeah, I love how we just gradually learn more of Brook and his ties to Laboon, and we recognize more and more his humanity in there, which of course Luffy saw from the start, and Frankie especially increasingly recognizes with a lot of compassion. And we see the importance of dreams and promises. Once again, these great One Piece themes that are tied to each new member of the crew that we are introduced to. He has his dreams, he has his promises, he has to get back to Laboon, and this is something that has been eating away at him for all these 50 some odd years that he's been drifting. These dreams, they're not just, the things that keep us motivated, that help us to stay alive, but they're what give us meaning. They are what give us meaning. They also are the thing that can connect us to other people, because in the process of pursuing our dreams, we often come into communion with other people, with friends who become family, as we have with the Straw Hats, and then we can help each other in achieving our dream. That has been my experience in life for sure, that my greatest dreams have only been possible through the help of others. And that's just beautiful, and the Straw Hats really begin to see Brook's value, how well he's going to fit in with the crew. We begin to see it in the process of this saga, through how he helps them and how he participates and proves vital, in fact. And we get to the final fight. There's always, an amazing final fight here. They have to get their shadows back before sunrise, and you get the big showdowns with Oars and with Moria, of course. And every time you think the Straw Hats and their allies have won, then, the baddies come up with something bigger. But lots of hijinks and zaniness abound. There are some unexpected allies there in Lola and her followers, which is great. Some beautiful heroism from them as well. They don't have superpowers, but they show incredible bravery and loyalty. And yeah, you have good moments for all the Straw Hats too, like Usopp's negativity being used against Perona. He's immune to her negative ghosts. You have even the Sniper King shows up as well, right? So good stuff. Nami, I think, rises to the occasion to fight against her pervert pursuer in Absalom. And, Sanji also realizes that he's probably better off without the devil fruit that Absalom got. And of course, we have Zoro's really cool fight with the Wano samurai, where he gets his new sword. And I like how that was done initially as a sort of a fake out, where we initially think, oh no, Zoro's been defeated. But we find out very soon after, not what happened, just in the way it's been presented there on the page. I thought that was cool. And that is also the first time with Zoro's victory over the Wano samurai that nothing happens. And I love this little idea that Oda has put into here, the idea of nothing happening. What is he doing with that? I think maybe he's exploring a little bit the idea of great deeds being witnessed versus unwitnessed, and what motivates a person to do deeds of such devotion. Devotion to a cause. You're beyond being witnessed. It's not for the sake of being witnessed. You have transcended the need for recognition into something more pure, into something that you're just doing it for the sheer devotion to that thing. In, of course, Zoro's case, it's being the greatest swordsman ever. Yeah, but I love that. I love that. And of course, it is connected later on to an even greater moment, which I'll be talking about. But another one that I want to hit on now is Chopper's assertion of the need for freedom. And this is a really important moment, I think. His assertion that freedom and will are essential for humanity to be fully realized, to be more than the shadow life that these zombies have, with no will of their own. And we see this in Sindri's moments of resistance. Maybe she doesn't succeed, but you see that humanity, that drive, that need for will within her. And we see it in the little bits of personality that come through, such as with the plates and dropping the plates. That's her humanity there. What makes us individual, these little quirks, these little parts of our personality, our will. And of course, there's, again, the big fights. Lots of big fights here with some big antagonists, Oars and Moria. There's heroism and there's sacrifice, because this is a family, and they are willing to put their lives down for each other. They're not just a team, but a family. And such devotion, such loyalty makes possible the miraculous, and numerous times. There are some just wonderful moments I could shout out. There's Nami and Lola fighting together against Absalom. And there was also a moment that asserts something important in the context of all of this coming together and family and everything else. And that is the importance of the individual in this. I mean, you don't want to entirely erase the individual. So even as the story affirms the importance of family, you have this moment where the crew forming the giant robot warrior. I mean, it's goofy and it's silly, but Robin says, "No, I don't want to do that." You know, she reminds us of the importance of the individual when she says, "I find it embarrassing as a human being." Right? She doesn't want to be part of this giant robot warrior, and then of course, Oars wax them off of their giant robot warrior move or whatever it was going to be. So I think that that's an important little message in there as well, that within the family there is of course a place, there should be room for the individual as well. So that was very cool. So there are limits, in other words. You don't want to lose yourself entirely within the communal. It is important, some individuality. That is what gives you, once again, your freedom. So that was really cool. Well done, Oda. And of course, it's a family when these individuals come together, and even Sanji and Zoro have their great. I love it when those two work together because cool things always happen. And Brook also working as part of the crew, just great stuff. And help from outside, let's acknowledge that too. Lola, the proposer, and her crew, they stuff Luffy with the 100 shadows, turning him into, depending on how you want to put it, Nightmare Luffy or the Warrior of Hope. Really, there's so many cool moments that you could pick from all these fights, especially as Moria becomes more and more swollen with his power. The 1,000 Shadows, or the Shadows Asgard, which I thought, I love the Norse nods here, the Norse myth. The Asgard, of course, being the place where all the Einherjar go. These are the chosen warriors. The Valkyrie come and pick these warriors from the battlefields where they have died, and they bring them up to Valhalla. And in Asgard, they party all the time, and they drink mead and feast and all of that, and they fight every day. But this is all in preparation for Ragnarok, where this is the end of times battle between the gods and the giants and the forces of chaos and everything. So they have a big role to play in support of Odin and the gods. But of course, in this case, it's an allusion to Moria bringing these 1,000 shadows to himself, is swelling himself with ranks and with power. And so that's a cool illusion. I love it. And of course, he is super powerful, but the Straw Hats dig deep with some admirable loyalty, as I said before, between themselves and also with Lola and the new allies. And Lola refusing to leave, paying the ultimate price to show her loyalty there. Beautiful stuff, I thought. And they really all do stretch to their limits, pun intended, because there's Luffy there, to achieve victory in the nick of time. And they regain their shadows. They assert their freedom and their humanity, having been willing to lay down everything in the process. And this is best said, as I said, by Lola, who refuses to go back to the shadows. They keep on coming. They keep on bouncing back, right? That's what Luffy does. He keeps bouncing back. And we achieve victory with the return of the shadows, not just to the people there on Thriller Bark, but to people all over the world. The effects are rippling all over the place, which is really a wonderful message in of itself, because great deeds do have effects beyond the immediate present, don't they? But let's not forget, in the midst of this victory arrives Kuma, another of the 7 warlords, and maybe even scarier one in many ways. And of course, he's there to represent the world government. And also, interestingly, he lets us know some important things. His presence there lets us know, I think, a little bit of what's to come. You have the promotion of Blackbeard as one of the new 7 warlords, and you have some real trouble, it seems, for Ace. So I don't want to neglect mentioning that, because I think that's got to come up. Ace being Luffy's older brother, of course. He seems to be in a bad spot, to judge by the piece of paper or the card that he had given to Luffy. But the important thing in the immediate moment here is that Kuma represents control. control versus freedom, right? This is a big One Piece theme. He's there to assert the power that the world government has over the narrative. No, we can't have it known that another of the seven warlords was defeated by this nobody, straw hat, goofball, right? That there must be no witnesses to this event because this would suggest that there is some fragility to the power of the world government, and they can't have that message. They need total control. And so you just feel the terrible injustice of this. Here you have the Straw Hats and their friends. They fought so hard. And you just feel the wrongness of Kuma's presence there, his mission, with a sense of rage. After all they have done, after all they have strived for, they have achieved the impossible. They've won their lives back with their shadows. You had this entity with great power showing up in this very impersonal way. He's not a human kind of cyborg like Frankie. Frankie's a cyborg, but he's the most human character you can find. But Kuma, no. He is a dispassionate enforcer. He obeys the letter of the law with brutal power and almost no compassion, no mercy. He literally says no mercy. Ironically, he's called a pacifista. This is what he is. Whatever kind of robot cyborg thingy he is the name for it is a pacifista. One who brings about peace? I don't think so. This is how 1984 can you get with this world government, right? I mean, it's it's pretty. War is peace and that kind of thing, and Big Brother is watching you and all of that. So it's a theme that is very well handled here in One Piece, and I can see it's of central importance here. So I'm going to be on the lookout for it. And yet there is something that gets through to even Kuma. Maybe, and I think this is important. It's a you blink and you miss it, but he does mention that he is incomplete. Does that mean that there is some humanity left in him? Perhaps. If so, I hope he remains incomplete. But I love that Oda gives this little bit of room, this tiny little, crevice there where there's some humanity lurking in some of these villains. Or I guess that I think of Kuma as a villain anyway at this point. He mentions this Dr. Vegapunk or something like that. But he's, I'm assuming, an important character. Is he another Frankenstein type like Dr. Hogback, who thinks he can just, invent things to improve the world and in the meantime crush the humanity all around him? I don't know, but I don't. I think I'm based on this Kuma character and what he's done with him. I have a feeling that this could be a very dangerous character, but we'll see. But anyway, there is a bit of humanity left in there, and this is important because I think Kuma recognizes the loyalty shown by Luffy's crew. He says to them, "Hey, all right, fine. I'll just take Luffy's head and go. How about that?" And none of them are willing. They all, not just the Straw Hats, but also Lola and her people won't have it. You have this beautiful loyalty, this love, but also the recognition that they would be less, that they would lose if they gave up their friend, that they would give up their freedom, actually, and their humanity if they were to agree to that bargain to allow Kuma to have Luffy's head. And I think Kuma does recognize their loyalty, particularly in respect to Zoro and his courage. I think that's beautiful. And Sanji as well was willing to do it, but it's Zoro who actually goes through with it. And Kuma recognizes that Zoro's sacrifice and his courage would put him to shame, would put himself, Kuma, to shame if he just followed his orders. He recognizes that. So he spares Luffy, but with this price, of course. There has to be a price, which is, all right, fine. I'll let you take his place. But you have to take his pain. You have to take his suffering. You have to take all of the agony that Luffy has just suffered in the course of defeating Moria. Zoro's survival is in doubt, but through his strength and his courage, he does survive, barely. And of course, once again, nothing happened, right? This is Zoro's very cool stance in this moment. There's this purity of his heroism, His also just the beauty of his loyalty and his love that needs no recognition. This is unconditional love. It needs no recognition. This is he loves so much that he doesn't want the object of his love, Luffy, to feel in debt or to feel less for having been helped. And this is something that Sanji gets because Sanji actually knows, in spite of Zoro trying to keep it under wraps, Sanji understands, and he also expresses his understanding of this. So it is, in many ways, an unwitnessed sacrifice, which makes it all the more beautiful in a sense. Except that I think as readers, we are satisfied because Sanji witnesses it and also Robin figures it out too. Robin being really, I think, Sanji and Robin both being perhaps the most clever of the Straw Hats in many ways. But of course, it is Brook who steals the show with Binks's brew. And there are just, as I said before, so many layers in this scene at the end, so many layers of memory. And we are there with the Rumbar Pirates. We are there with Laboon and the beautiful bond that forms between them through song, through music. I mean, music is one of the most powerful forms of storytelling that we have. And these stories, of course, this is how we make sense of the world. This is how we make sense of all of the sensory input that we have in our experiences and our loves and our losses, the beauty and the wonder and the sorrow and the joy and all of it. Stories are how we make sense of it. And music is just one of the most beautiful forms of story that we have. So I found it so poignant to see Brook and his crew, the Rumbar Pirates, singing their song Binks's Brew one last time as they're literally dying. They're falling one at a time. Wow, what a poignant moment as they are both celebrating, commemorating their fellowship, even as it's ending right there. We're witnessing the end of it. And of course, Brook becoming the soloist, emphasizing his loneliness. And there's real pathos. There is deep pathos and melancholy in that. It's just such a powerful backstory, so beautifully told through music. And then you, of course, in the midst of that, you have mixed in the celebration of the present with the Straw Hats and their allies. And this is, for the moment, this present victory is all happiness. But I think with the admixture here of memories from the past, we are being reminded that all things do come to an end. That is the nature of life. And the beautiful moments, they are beautiful because they are fleeting. They are beautiful because they don't last. That is just intrinsically part of their nature. You cannot have beauty that lasts forever. Beauty is, in its essence, ephemeral. So you have the laughter and you have the tears. You have the celebration of life and a memorial to those who have passed on simultaneously. It is really, for me, the most poignant One Piece party that I have seen so far. And it reaches a climax in the memory of Laboon, in my opinion. I love that moment. It's such a transcendent beauty of friendship and loyalty and connection. It's all about connection. Where do we find meaning? We find it in connection. And often it's through our stories that we connect. And Brook is glad that he lived. In spite of all that he's been through, in spite of the loneliness and the sorrow, he is glad that he has lived because he has purpose going forward. He has friendship, he has fellowship, and he is going to find Laboon and fulfill his promise. This new purpose, I think, is what allows him to lay old ghosts to rest. We see that near the very end. And a beautiful scene with Zoro, who also, I think, is doing something similar as he leaves behind his broken sword. Just another great One Piece moment there. I really love the ending of this saga. Oda gave us one of the most beautiful backstories in this one. And it turns out, in fact, that Brook is very much fleshed out. Even as we hear him bid farewell, because it won't be long before we're casting off, sailing out on our journey to the ends of the sea. Yo ho ho, yo ho ho ho, yo ho ho, yo ho ho ho.